What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It presents a history of sitcoms through Wandavision. This next episode is a doozy because we have left the sitcom format, but that doesn't mean I haven't found ways to connect it to old television. We got a lot of good stuff in it. We are now either 2 episodes left or 1 episode left. The internet keeps lying to me, and I don't know what to believe anymore.
It's 1.
Yeah.
Who knows? Anything's possible. They have to bridge that gap between Falcon and Winter Soldier. They know it's the only thing keeping us going. Love a good weekly release program. But of course, I'm your host, Blake Schultz, and with me today is Terrence Tatum.
Hello.
And Jamie Jarek.
Hi, friends.
Guys, what did you think about this week's episode of WandaVision, which has a title and a number that I have not said yet?
Yes, episode 8, previously on, is the name of this episode.
That's why we have co-hosts.
I think I texted you as soon as I loved this episode. This was hands down my favorite episode. And it's weird because a lot of the stuff, and we'll talk about it a little bit, a lot of the stuff that was given to us on this, especially as Marvel heads, we sort of already had inferred or knew. But I love anytime that you take a moment to put the character or the heartbeat into an episode or into a series, and it's like, this is like, all right, let's take a moment and let's get to the catharsis of all of this. And Elizabeth Olsen was doing the Lord's work in this episode. Like, she's always been great throughout the entire series. It was fucking insane in this. Like, it was nuts how good she was. And so I watered up a couple of times in this episode. I was like, yeah, that is what I needed in this, some type of emotional connection, because I love seeing the sitcom stuff, and I interacted and loved that in a different way, but I needed something that punched me in the gut, and this episode was like, yeah, I got you now you're mine. Whatever we do to you in the next episode, we're going to destroy you.
Yeah, I loved it so much. I mean, watching Elizabeth Olsen and Catherine Hahn just try to outact each other for 40 minutes is like someone went into my dreams and created this television program. I mean, Elizabeth Olsen, I wrote a whole article that she deserves an Emmy because she does. And not only was it just a great episode of television, but it's just so rare that we really get to see this kind of reaction to trauma, especially in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, I think I've said this before, but Iron Man 3 is the only time we've come even close. And it's just everything about it. And even we got to see why it's been sitcoms. And Wanda Maximoff has taste. The Dick Van Dyke Show is her favorite show. That really makes me happy.
I agree. I had very mixed feelings on this episode because on the one hand, it is incredibly well produced. It is incredibly well directed, well lit. The performances are incredible. A lot of very cool set work and design and transitions. I felt that I knew most of this information. I felt that the big reveal of, oh, well, she always had these witch abilities. I thought, and maybe I'm just having a Mandela effect, that in Age of Ultron, they say the Mind Stone is bringing out powers that were there. I thought that was known, but I could be wrong.
People put Ultron so far down that maybe they themselves have forgotten what happens in the movie, but I don't remember.
We've had 7 weeks to just hit Disney Plus. Show me Age of Ultron.
They keep telling me I need to watch this.
I love Age of Ultron. I watch it all the time because it's the first movie that has Elizabeth Olsen in it, and James Spader. I love Age of Ultron. Let's just end it there. And I don't think that they do, but I mean, it is kind of a deal that that they're the only people that survived. So it's so I think it was always maybe a little implied that something else was going on. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning is there have been so many holes with Wanda. People have always why is her accent change? Why is her hair change? All this. And I think they really nailed it. Just nailed her journey and made any question marks or no longer.
Well, anybody who doesn't know why her hair changes has never dated somebody in the mid-thousands. That just happens. But there was so much else that I liked in it. I loved seeing why the sitcoms, and I also thought that was something that we could piece together just thematically. We've talked a lot about that on this show of like, well, here's what these shows mean. And a third of the show is always, why are we using this show for these characters? We've been kind of digging at that.
Well, I think I even said on one of these episodes that I feel like, I mean, we sort of inferred that, like, I think that she's using this and recreating. That's why it's not a one-to-one on these sets. She's recreating this from stuff she used to watch as a child.
But I think knowing it and seeing it are always different. And getting these great moments with her and Vision together, watching why the house in Westview, anything with Agatha, so much of the comedy too of that accent just comes and goes.
Seems like a throwaway line, but it's so funny. I was like, oh, that's meta. I love it.
I was having this conversation with my roommate the other day of people watch things for different reasons. And we're starting to see a lot of people who clearly are watching Marvel movies, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this, for the action. I've always thought where they excel are the moments of heart, are the moments of hope. Jamie brought up Iron Man 3, which I think is an underrated Marvel movie because it has so much of Tony just dealing with Tony. And I have to protect the one thing I can't live without, and that's you. And I'm just a man in a can. Like, these are the moments that I like in these episodes. Age of Ultron has them too. Hawkeye and Wanda, everything with Vision. These are, to me, what separates the Marvel movies from other movies in the genre are these emotional moments that even Sam Raimi's Spider-Man had. And this episode was full of that. The big line that's going around online right now of, but what is grief if not blah, 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 blah. Incredible.
Vision spitting bars.
I go watch Paul Bettany read me the phone book. All of that stuff was great. I just wish that we had gotten a little bit more new information. There was a lot of stuff there that maybe I assumed and then assumed correctly, which is great. And I wish there had been one big, and there was, to be fair. We learned that she didn't steal Vision. We learned that Hayward is doing something bad. We get our big comic book moment with the White Vision, which, man, am I hoping for a big superhero finale now.
There's got to be a big battle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My biggest complaint with these characters in these movies is we haven't seen Vision and Wanda go crazy yet. We nerfed them down in Civil War. They're not even really there they're there in Age of Ultron, but the beginning of Civil War, Vision's not even helping out. Their big fight at the airport, he just shoots a mind laser down and Scarlet Witch is just blocking people. But I want to see some like 3-on-1 battles with these giant characters. And now we have witches on the table. The beginning with Agatha was also great. I'm wondering if we're still connecting all these to the Infinity Stones. We see blue, purple, and red. And she's absorbing power, it's purple. We know Wanda's is chaos magic, which would be reality. If we're still color coding these to these abilities.
True.
Yeah.
We know. I also now the urge for Doctor Strange has to be there, right? Because the other side of the coin of witches is wizards, and the wizards have to have the Satorius Sanctum. So I would assume that Strange knows about Agatha, and that's going to be our big cameo.
I think so too.
Yeah, I agree. I want to say what you were saying about like the thing you didn't like was no new like information, and while I agree there were no big like huge surprises, it didn't bother me because in television that not every single episode has that. I mean, sometimes an episode is just you are learning more about the characters and how they're growing and why they make their choices, and that's what makes. I mean, I've never preferred TV over movies or vice versa. I love them both so much, but there is something to be said about television and how you get to learn more about characters and really understand their emotions because you get that time.
Yeah,
so I don't need any answers. Seeing her emotions are enough answers, but I do understand where you're coming from when you get only 9 episodes.
Right. Because you're looking at a crunch time. You're like, well, we only got 2 episodes. This stuff that's in this episode, I know. Can we do something new? Because I know I'm only going to get to do this one more time.
This is probably the episode when I get the whole thing and I can just binge it in one sitting. This is going to be an episode that I love. But right now I'm like, oh, but there's only one more left and I have so many questions.
Yeah, I get that. It makes sense. I agree though, Jamie. I'm looking at Marvel's doing a good job of using these almost like actual comic books.
Yes.
Whereas like we're doing each of these episodes going to be like not everything's going to be a high action sequence in each of these issues, but we're going to do something different where you can't really take this time. you're basically doing the big event in the films now, where these TV shows are like, we're breaking this down and getting to the minutia
which
of it all.
sounds great.
Yeah.
I just finally finished the Vision and the Scarlet Witch run. It took me a little while because the 80s can be a little rough, but I learned reading them all in one sitting that I preferred when it got to the drama stuff, when it's like, oh, Quicksilver's wife is cheating on him. Like, that was more interesting to me than watching like a fight in a drawing. I'd rather like, yeah.
It's why these characters have lasted so long. Spider-Man wouldn't be a relevant character without great power comes great responsibility, and without mourning Gwen Stacy, and without these other heavy moments. And even Miles Morales wouldn't have lasted the now decades that he's lasted without these connections to his community and these stories about his mom and his dad and his city. And if it was just flash in a pan action, they'd be as remembered as the Transformers movies are.
I'm sorry, what are those?
Well, you see, Terrence, there are robots in disguise.
Well,
but
I'll be damned.
there's something else in disguise in this episode, and that is their reference to sitcoms. While we are not doing a traditional decade because we're past it, we skipped the 90s. I'm tired of the 80s and 90s are the same argument. I'm tired of Malcolm in the Middle feeling like the 90s argument. We skipped it, but I'm going to skip that plight. Because now we're doing another trope of sitcoms. And I feel like this was a theory a lot of people had, and no one's really addressing it, but it is, in a way, a clip show of Wanda's life. I think a lot of people thought it would be a clip show of the shows we've seen from Agatha's perspective. And instead, what we got was some Civil War, some Age of Ultron, and everything in between, and some of the pilot of the episode. Clip shows, as I'm sure everyone knows, are either wonderful or irritating based on how you're feeling that week. They're often used as a narrative device to just simply go, here's what's been going on. They have a weird framing system around it, whether it's Homer Simpson in a coma or the Seinfeld's up on trial, bringing back characters from their past, or even as weird things as Community just pretending to do it. We're going back and highlighting major moments of the show. The history of this dates all the way back to, I want to get my year correct here, 1936, when they would do entire chapters before TV. Almost half the episode was a reminder. And at the time, this was almost for archival purposes. Nobody really knew about home video. It wasn't on anyone's radar. We really thought, we're never going to see these again. So doing a clip show, doing a before, doing a moratorium was a way to remind viewers, lapsed viewers, new viewers, and even last week viewers. People have short memories. They're watching a lot of TV. But it was also a way to keep what was, because we didn't have DVDs. We didn't have film archives. We didn't have Blu-rays or streaming or anything else. Now you can watch every single sketch of SNL, but you used to have to cobble together those best of DVDs if you wanted any of it.
Yeah.
This all went, some of the most famous examples are the Three Stooges in 1949 and 1957, which would constantly reuse old footage and old gags. It was later used closer to shows either being on syndication or giant, huge moments in this show, introducing a new character, a character leaving. But often it did come down to budget. In animation, they did it a lot because you didn't have to spend time on animation. You didn't have to spend time in production. If you needed an episode up, you got one. 22 episodes was a lot.
Right. You could just spend one whole, like what you would normally do for a week of taping. Like, well, you guys only need to be on set one day because we're going to do the rest of this through clips.
I think they're also interesting because they really show the change in how we watch and develop TV. Because as DVDs got popular, as syndication got more and more common, as streaming came in, no one does a clip show. There's no BoJack Horseman clip show, because why would you need it? It's all right there, and people consume this so quickly that if you now use, and you get less episodes, 8 episodes on Netflix, 10 on Peacock. If one of these shows spent 40 minutes playing to what was, you'd be mad. You'd probably, people now binge the entire MCU before one movie. This is...
Yeah. It's... Go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I may have said this in the past, but I just in January I rewatched all of The Office, and like when they got to their clip show, I was like, I watched all of this literally within like the week. I don't need this, but they always do it where there's like a little bit of plot slivered in, so they like make you do it. I'm so glad it's not a thing anymore. Growing up, Friends was my favorite show as a kid, and it was in syndication all day. I mean, I could watch it all day. So even as a kid, just with having it on TV, when they got to their clip episodes, I'm like, ugh, I can quote all of these by heart. I do not need this.
Nothing was worse than the rerun of the clip show. There was
because you're like, oh, it's a new show, and you're like, nope, you're rerunning the god.
Coming home from school at 3:00, doing my homework till 5 before Fox showed me King of the Hill, The Simpsons, and That 70s Show, and I'd get 4 hours of TV before the news, which I didn't watch because I was a kid, or whatever. And if one of those 30-minute blocks was anything that was a clip show, I was furious. Unless, very specifically, in a pre-YouTube world, I really liked the Simpsons clip show episode that was all their musicals, because I couldn't just look up musical numbers on the internet like I can now. So usually if that one popped on, I got very excited.
I didn't know that was a thing, and now I need to go find that episode.
Yeah, they do a whole musical clip show episode. That's great.
I gotta find that.
It's interesting because I went down the whole rabbit hole of this because the title of this is also the trope that it's called. Like it's known by. Like previously on is the trope that this is used, and it's used in a couple of different forms because I know some TV shows still do it. The stuff that comes before an episode, where it's like previously on, and they'll specifically cut it so they'll give you clips that are giving you clues as to what you should be paying attention to. So like, yeah, this might have happened like 5 episodes ago, but right now this character that you saw 5 episodes is about to pop back in. So this is why we're showing you this now for this episode. That's one version of the previously on. And then the other one is sort of what Blake has been talking to. And it's a couple of versions of those. It's either a clip episode where we're going to show you all the stuff that we've done in the past, or sort of what this show did, where we're going to show you stories from the past, but not necessarily what you've seen, but we're doing a flashback to stuff that happened to fill in some of the gaps of story beats that we have not shown you before, but this character's life is going back. Newsroom does that a lot. When, like, from season 2 to season 3, the top of that season 3 is like, hey, this is a previously on episode, but we're basically bridging the gap between 2 and 3 to cover some of the stuff that existed in those 5 or 7 months of off-air time, or like history time. We can do it in one show by showing you flashbacks of what these characters were going through that time. And that's sort of a different form of previously on, which is more what it's in line with what this version of WandaVision is doing.
Blake brought up the Community episode, and I just wrote an article of like the essential sitcom episodes to watch, and now I'm actually mad I didn't think of the Community one, because I think that is the perfect example, I think, of what you're talking about. I mean, it's more for bits, it doesn't really give you information, but I think that it's so clever the way that they do it.
I think that's another reason why a lot of people got just tired of it, because usually these episodes will be framed literally all the same way. Like, let's open up a photo album, or let's do a court or some type of court sequence where there's no more generic way to set this up than humanly possible. Community is one of those ones where it's like, all right, we're going to have a little fun with how we go about this, as opposed to doing this.
Yeah, it was always the power's out. We have to tell old stories. Yeah. Something's happening with a relative and we have to pull out an old photo book.
Like the entire family has not been around each other the entire season, but for some reason on this one episode, everyone happens to be in the same place at the exact same time.
You mean like how every episode of Modern Family, they're like, we have to get the family together. And I'm like, you get the family together once a week. No urgency for this.
I have to update you guys because I started Modern Family before our last episode to like just sample it, but I haven't stopped, and now I've watched the first 3 seasons and I don't even really like it, but for some reason I'm like, oh, I'm gonna keep going. Like it's really easy, and it's just kind of a nice thing to watch. Like I don't laugh that much. Occasionally it'll get me, but there's something about it that's like really comforting, and I can't believe that it's only been a week and now I'm like about to start season 4.
It's like you said, it's very digestible, and I think right now we, like Wanda, need some comfort shows, because if we're getting, it's very easy this episode to go, why are we using this trope for this week? And it is that we are now seeing that television is what got Wanda through the toughest times. That really, when we went back, we're seeing her dad selling, I thought it was like bootleg shows, but other people seem to disagree with me. His suitcase of DVDs, I thought was like the person on the street in Chicago who's like, I've got the new DVDs.
It felt like, because the box cover for those seemed like those were the original art. I just think he got a US copy of those, or the US version of those, and I don't necessarily think they were illegal versions.
That Malcolm DVD had to be fairly new.
Well, that's why I was like, are these
timing
newlyweds?
wise, yeah.
Yeah, it had to like. I feel like TV. I wanted to look up when because I started collecting DVDs in 2001. Malcolm was 2000, and what Wanda was maybe like 13, 12, and she was born in 89.
Yeah.
So the math I think checks out, but it was pretty hairy, including the Malcolm DVD, because it was the only in the whole case you saw. Malcolm was the only like newer show.
Newest,
It was
like
also
Who's
the
the Boss
most-
was spined, and then they had like a couple of other, and I was like, all these shows fit into the same almost year, and then that's a brand new DVD. Like Malcolm does
also
not fit the rest of it.
kind of explains why we didn't get a 90s episode though, because if she was that young watching like Nick at Night type shows, that's just where we watched them.
Yeah.
Dick Van Dyke, I Love Lucy, Growing Pains,
Right.
and then she was growing up during Malcolm in the Middle. It almost makes sense that she would like now she would be going back and being like, wow, Friends and Seinfeld. Like
Mhm.
she'd be in the discovery process the way I was with like 80s stuff.
Right.
But which is why to me though it's weird that Malcolm is in there at all. I don't know. It just it doesn't seem to fit. And I definitely want to talk about all of the episodes that she watches. But I will just since we're talking about Malcolm now, of the Dick Van Dyke and the Brady Bunch episode she watches, which I do want to delve into later. It makes sense. I cannot figure out why health insurance is the Malcolm episode that she's watching during her big emotional scene with Vision. I don't know why that was the choice. Whereas the other shows, I can clearly see where they were coming from. And there's nothing wrong with that. I watched the episode last night. It was very funny. But of a 7-season show, why was that the episode they felt needed to be in that moment?
I feel like it might have just been because of how slapsticky and dangerous that bit was. They gave Vision a line to beat into what he was going to say. Because otherwise, you're right. It doesn't thematically doesn't make sense. But I think that looks nuts. Like that man should be dead. But for comedic purposes, it gives Vision a reason to jump off into what he's.
That's
what he
true.
And Vision should be dead, but he's fine.
Okay, you know what, you guys, I'm sold. You're right. You're 100% right. And thank you. This is why I talk to you. You fill in my brain gaps.
That's the trick. So then, Jamie, why were these episodes chosen for this episode?
Oh, I'd
That's
love
a
to talk
tongue
about that,
twister.
Blake. Okay, so first of all, we have to talk. Okay, the Dick Van Dyke episode. Now, there's a little wonkiness, but I can explain the wonkiness, and we actually touched on this in our first episode. And she says that she wants to watch season 2, episode 21, the Walnut episode, but that's actually season 2, episode 20. But if you go on Hulu, it would be marked at 21 because the unaired Carl Reiner pilot that we talked about, I can't remember the title, something family, happy family, something, that's not right, but it's in that, something like that. They include that. So I don't know if they include that in the DVD, but I'm going to assume so.
I mean, it was a nice box set that had special features galore.
Exactly. So, but it is. But like, I even my friend Nora did a BuzzFeed article, and even because we in both of our articles talking about it, we were like, well, they misnumbered it. It's wrong. But it's like, I guess it depends. I wish I had the box set so I could look and see. Any listeners, if you have the Dick Van Dyke box set, please let us know what the numbering is. So, okay, that's taken care of. We understand that. But the Walnut episode specifically makes so much sense because it's Rob and Laura are in bed. Rob's watching some sci-fi and it's really scaring Laura and she's really upset. She does not want the scariest thing before bed. But then Rob is the one who has like intense nightmares where like walnuts are everywhere and he keeps seeing walnuts and it's like terrifying and he can't wake himself up. And it ends in that adorable moment that you see in the WandaVision episode where Mary Tyler Moore falls out of the closet with the walnuts. Gosh, what an adorable, perfect woman.
Yeah.
But I think that they chose that episode specifically. I mean, it's about, science fiction and nightmares and fears. And I think that, that like, it's literally an episode that the Scarlet Witch could have inserted into your brain. And also, when Wanda and her brother are waiting for that bomb to go off, she literally says something along the lines of, "You wake up, or the 30 minutes ends," or something along those lines, and the nightmare's over. And that is what that episode was about, that you will wake up from your nightmare. So that episode was on the nose. Like, I can't think of any other episode they would have chosen for that. And shall I move on to the Brady Bunch episode?
By all means.
So the Brady Bunch episode we talked about a lot already in our 70s episode, and it was Kitty Carryall is missing. And obviously there was the connection where Vision was playing with the Kitty Carryall doll in the 70s episode. And so it makes sense, I think, in the scheme of things, where, you know, Cindy Brady has this doll to play house with. It's her baby. It's her fake little baby. And if Wanda knows about anything, it's fake little babies. I think, again, Kitty Carryall goes missing, right on the nose. It's also a classic episode. It has the Brady kids are all against each other. It's got that really good trial scene. It's an iconic episode, much like the Walnut episode is. I'm not as familiar with Malcolm in the Middle, so I don't know if the health insurance is considered like a top tier episode.
I don't know either. I would have to assume it is, just because it's very good. But
yeah, it's a good episode. I mean, Bryan Cranston, Emmy-worthy stuff. But again, you guys sold me though. I'm like, yep, nope, that's why they picked that episode. So that makes sense to me now. But I do like the carefulness of which they chose them, and I especially, it's interesting that the Kitty Carryall doll is really the only specific prop. Though, like, I'm surprised we didn't see walnuts in the first episode.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting to see. I mean, obviously we don't watch all of the shows, but it's kind of cool to see her as a child watching it, and like, just think about when you were a kid and you watch shows. Like, what is it that's stuck in your brain that you remember? Like, oh, I remember Dick Van Dyke tripping over this ottoman, so when I recreate this, I'm gonna have Vision go through one of these like chairs or ottomans. Like, you pick and choose certain things, and so not all of it sticks, especially at that age. You're not remembering, especially when you go through as much trauma as that young lady goes through. You're not going to remember every one of those sitcoms that you watch.
Oh, I mean, even now I used to know The Simpsons like the back of my hand, and now I'm combining episodes and jokes and bits. But so then I guess the last bit that we're going to talk about here are our comfort shows that we have. We're in a pandemic. I'm sure we've all binged 1,000 shows. Jamie, what are some of tell us what you think a comfort show is and what some of those are for you.
I can happily tell you that, because my whole life is comfort shows. I mean, I think a show that makes you feel safe, and make that you're comfortable with, and that, and 99% of my comfort shows are sitcoms, with the exception of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy is my favorite show of all time, and I've seen every episode a million times, and even though it's dark and some of it's really sad and scary, it has become a comfort show for me, and it is one I've watched through twice, I think, already in the pandemic. Because I love those characters, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, in terms of shows taking their time, and I think Buffy is the perfect example of a great 22 episode show, where you can have the monster of the week, and you can flesh out your characters and learn about the characters. And I think that's really what defines a comfort show. Again, it's rare that my comfort show was like that. Some people's comfort shows are murder shows, like true crime. That couldn't be me. I can't deal with true crime. So nothing has been more relatable to me than a whole Marvel show about somebody who deals with their trauma by watching TV. I mean, come on.
I was like, I feel seen. I know this.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny. As soon as she was on the bed with Vision, I was like, oh, I've been this person. Like, when something terrible happens in my life, I either like listen to music that I know, or I'm watching some type of content that like makes me at least feel comfortable, even if it's for like an hour or however long the episode or show is. That does that for me. It's funny though. A lot of my comfort shows are almost time based. Like Scrubs is one I can watch whatever, but a lot of mine is time based. Like, when I was younger, I used to watch Golden Girls with my mom all the time. My mom's no longer here, so Golden Girls is one of those ones where I'm like, that feels like a warm blanket that I can put on. I'm like, I can watch this, and I'm like, oh yes, this reminds me of that time. And then there's stuff like Grey's Anatomy, which doesn't seem like it would be a comfort show because that show can get a little dark, but it's the first series that I actively got into right after I moved from LA. I mean, right after I moved from Detroit to LA. So it's like it's been on from when I got out here till now, and it's like, oh, I can go back to the beginning. I remember how my apartment, how I had no furniture in that first apartment. The very first episode I'm watching, like, while my TV is on a box and I'm watching, I'm like, oh yeah, this reminds me of like getting started out here. So I'm going back through that process. So it's like triggering points of life, and I'm like, oh yeah, that takes me back there. That was fun.
I feel like I wear all of mine on my sleeve. If you've been listening to the show, you already know them. It's I put on my like the tweet that was going around like, oh, you're WandaVision, and what are yours? And I said, I Love Lucy, The Facts of Life, Gilligan's Island, Seinfeld, Simpsons, The Office, and Community. But really, the shows that I can put on anytime that'll make me feel good are The Simpsons, The Office, and probably Scrubs. I think those are the three that I can just constantly, I can just start at the beginning and just lose myself in. Probably Parks and Rec is in there too, of just whatever. They're just a little easy and they're digestible, and I know everyone's going to be okay. I think the thing that I like about watching Scrubs and The Office that makes me feel comforted, and they've done a lot of studies on this now, of like, if you have anxiety, you rewatch shows because you don't have to worry about anything. It's like right now we're all very worried about those kids and Agatha and everyone and Vision, and there's a lot of just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that was also my issue with this episode, is I was like, but there's so many things I don't know. Is everybody
Where are the
okay?
kids?
Where's Pietro? Where's Jimmy?
Where is
Woo?
Pietro?
Is Darcy okay? I haven't seen her. Where is she?
Look, we finally called her Scarlet Witch. I love that. We got a lot of comics. There's a lot in there, but those are all the shows where I'm like, I know everyone, like Scrubs. I'm like, I know it's going to end, and JD's going to get everything he wants, and everyone's going to get everything that they want, and it's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. And in The Office, I'm like, because I hated the last season of The Office when it was like Jim and Pam are on the rocks. And now when I rewatch it, it doesn't bother me because I'm like, well, I know they're going to be fine. I know they're going to be 100% okay.
The same.
That happened. Like I'm Blackish is another one of those shows that I can watch. But there's a season in the middle of Blackish where they go through like they're separated and they get a divorce and they start having separate homes. And I'm like, I don't like any of this.
Or I also hate
the episodes after that, like back together. And I'm like, okay, I know where this is going now. So I've been through the turmoil of this.
I was in college when the Michael Scott Paper Company arc was happening. And I remember every week being like, I hate it. This is bad. I don't like where the show is going. And now when I rewatch it, I'm like, this is a really funny season.
They did well.
And it took me a while to be like, oh, it's because now I like my dumb idiot brain is like, I know it's going to be okay.
And you want that with sitcoms. I feel like I should mention some of my sitcoms because Buffy shouldn't count because it's not. I think I went through like deep phases, like Terrence was saying, time. When I was a little kid, it was all about Full House. That was my comfort show. I mean, I've loved the Olsens my whole life, you know. And then in my older kid years, 13 years, even like early college, it was Friends. I think it's safe to say there is no show on this earth I've seen more than Friends. But interestingly, recently I started from the beginning because it'd been a couple of years and I made it to season 3 and it's still, I think it's a great show minus its problems. I think the joke writing is unmatched, but it got to the Ross and Rachel drama. And even though I know it happened, I've seen it a million times, I was like, I'm not mentally in the mood for this. And in Chicago, after college, it was Parks and Rec. My roommate Becca and I watched Parks and Rec. We would just sit and watch a whole season in a day and just in a fog, like what just happened? What, like we've done this so many times. Why are we still doing this? And these days in the pandemic, I rewatched Community twice. Community has been a big source of pandemic comfort. But one the last few years for me has been Cheers, 100%. I came to Cheers kind of late in life. I didn't start it until after I graduated college. And now, as you know, I have a giant Cheers tattoo. There is something about Cheers that really hits me right in the soul. And it aged so well.
I mean, more recent comedy that I've gotten back into was thanks to Disney Plus is Dinosaurs is now on there, and that is a show that
not a show where you know it'll all be fine.
Oh no, it won't be fine because we know what's going to happen to those wonderful. But it's like I forget how much fun I had with that show and how intelligent it was. And I'm watching and just smiling like, oh, this is a good time. Like this show was like
Oh,
way
yeah.
ahead
I
of
need
its
to go
time.
back now that it's on Disney Plus because I loved that as a kid as well.
That and the
Yeah.
Muppets, they're just hitting all the cues.
Oh, I've been watching a lot of the Muppets.
When am I
Muppet
getting
Show.
my puppet WandaVision episode?
Oh, give me a musical episode. Give me a puppet
I-
episode. Like come on.
Musical, puppet, animated. I want all of it.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen the puppet episode of Angel?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, season 5 of Angel is my favorite season of television, and the puppet episode is and it's an episode that leads into the saddest episode of the entire series, which I love. That there's nothing better to me than like hilarity, death,
And then just, I'm breaking you and your soul.
Oh, you must love Scrubs then, Jamie, because in 20 condensed minutes, they're like, what if we did some comedy, a little problematic comedy, and then we just hit you in the heart.
We're going to take an anvil over your heart. Enjoy.
I think after Modern Family, I might rewatch Scrubs. I have it all. It's been. I don't think I've watched it since I gave up halfway through that terrible final season. I do not think I've watched it since.
That's the spinoff, and you can ignore it. Just 1 through 8. That's
Yeah,
when
1
people are
through
like,
8.
they ruined it with the last season. I'm like, no, that's a different show.
It sucks because I really like Eliza Coop on that last season, but that series is not good on that final season.
Yeah. What an episode. What a show. We only have one more, and then I just don't know what we're going to do with our lives.
Oh, I guess
This-
it's Falcon and the Winter Soldier time.
This episode has to be above an hour, right? At least an hour, right?
I
Like,
read
it
50
can't-
minutes.
I
I don't know if
really-
that's true, but I read 50.
I trust Marvel more than I trust most companies. And I
agree.
trust Kevin Feige more than I trust any producer working. I mispronounced it again, didn't I?
Is that how you say it? I don't. Sometimes I hear names and I'm like, is that it? Because I
I've
only
been
read
saying
things.
Feige for years. I've also heard
thought it was
Feige,
Feige, but-
Feige. I've heard everyone say it every way.
But honestly, like I don't like. There's certain. Again, I read stuff. It took me so long to learn. Like Kevin Feige didn't say Shang-Chi. He said, what did he say? I don't know what he said, but I was like, is that how you say it? But then my other podcast, we interviewed the creator of Shang-Chi, and he's like, well, I say Shang-Chi. So who knows?
Yeah.
It's a mystery. I've been saying Jamie Jarek on this show. Her other podcast host says Jamie Jarek, so we'll never know.
It's Jamie Jirak. It's Jirak.
Ha-ha!
But as long as you don't say Jirak, I'm fine.
Who is
it's-
saying
it can
Who
be-
would
Jirek?
say that?
I guess because I don't know. Some
Is
people.
it a post
but
9/11
Jirak.
workout video?
Yeah, it's like close enough. You're good. You're fine.
But I feel like they could fumble the ball in this last episode.
There's a lot to
And
tie up.
Part of that is audience expectations. We're not getting the Fantastic Four and the X-Men.
no.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think we need to assume that Quicksilver is not X-Men Quicksilver. I think we got to push that aside. And I think a Luke Skywalker sized cameo might have been overselling it.
I think that they're tricking us, and Paul Bettany is like, it's someone I've always wanted to work with my whole life. I think he means himself.
That's what my roommate said the same thing. He was like, he's talking about himself.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
a
and
part
I-
of me was like, has he been on screen with Doctor Strange? He could just be like, oh, I've always wanted to work with Benedict Cumberbatch, and we've never had a scene together in the MCU.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Benedict is at this point the most likely scenario, because I think they have to lead into Doctor Strange.
Yeah, like everyone has been saying this series. I mean, the reason why we're not even contemplating a second season of this is because like this is meant as a one-off to lead directly into the feature, and Elizabeth has been down there shooting all forever with Strange, so she's going to be a big part of that. So this is directly. So Benedict is going to show up, even if it's just a post-credit sequence.
But
will
you
be
know what else she might mean by a Luke Skywalker cameo is Doctor Strange might show up and rock shit. Like that Luke Skywalker cameo was awesome because we were just like, whoa.
Well,
It
that's
wasn't
kind
that
of
character showed up. It was that hallway scene.
well, that's kind of where I'm at with this, because like there's only really two ways you can go with it, especially if you're leading into a feature film. She's either going to get crushed, and like those kids, if Marvel fans know
Oh,
what's going to
they don't
happen to those
exist.
kids, right?
They're not real.
So she's going to either get crushed and just be going to an even greater depression, or she's going to go batshit crazy and become the villain. And then Strange is going to probably have to show them like, we need to shut this woman down now. and that's sort of what leads into whatever is going to be
I
happening.
think it's going to be very similar to the end of Avengers Disassembled, but instead of Magneto going, "Give me my daughter," Strange is going to show up and just be like, "Give me Wanda," and like no one, Sword, Jimmy Woo, Darcy, no one will argue with him. Like he will just show up and everyone will be like, "We listened to him."
Yeah.
I mean, how else are you going to get, you're going to shift into something called the multiverse of madness? I mean, that's like, I feel like that says it all. There's only one way you're getting the multiverse of madness, and that's Wanda's kids are about to die. But we know they're coming back later. You know we're getting Young Avengers. We know we're getting Wiccan and Speed. So even when Billy and Tommy tragically die, you know, Blake, it's just like Jim and Pam in season 9. It's gonna be hard to watch Billy and Tommy die, but we know they're gonna come back as teens or 20-year-olds.
I'm really curious if we're going to handle White Vision in one episode, or if we're going to have a new villain that's just out in the world.
Ooh.
Or if we're going to really do the comics now and we're going to get White Vision who doesn't have any memories and he'll just slowly have to come back and we'll be waiting and waiting for him to return.
Yeah.
Either way, it's going to be great. And then we'll just have to wait a little bit for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I don't think I'll enjoy nearly as much as this. But if you've been...
Yeah, that was me just agree. I don't know why I said, I mean, as if I was going to go into a full, I think I'm really going to like it, but how can you top, with our tastes, how can you top WandaVision?
Yeah, I'm more interested in Loki than I am in
Same.
Falcon.
I mean, Tom Hiddleston, like we've got, like, I think Loki is maybe my second favorite MCU character. I love a good arc, and when you kill the star of my favorite TV show and I still love you, you're like really doing a good job, Tom Hiddleston.
Well, guys, that's our show today. You can leave us a review on iTunes, leave us a comment on YouTube, leave us a review wherever the reviews are. I don't care. You can, of course, follow the show at Hollywood ADI on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at, as always, Blake. Terrence is at Terrence Tatum. Jamie's at Jamie Cinematics. You're on the channel if you're watching, and you're listening if you're on the podcast, but there is more on the YouTube channel for Hollywood Already Did It, trailer reactions and such. We also do another podcast called You Can't Do That Anymore about movies that haven't aged well. I do another one called How Do You Figure about action figure and toy collecting. Jamie is, of course, on Phase Zero and writes at comicbook.com. And that is it.